Okay, let's talk more about the alien bodies that were presented in the Mexican UFO hearing last week. You know, I've been going back and forth. Is there some evidence to indicate these things might be real? I mean, the debunking is very strong with this one, I feel, but I've seen new evidence. Did it change my mind? Well, let's dive in, because we have a actual scientist, a doctor that studied the skull of the alien mummies, or bodies rather, and he, well, let's see what he has to say. It's really fascinating. So get in here. This is Jack with Cosmic Road. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Please hit like, please subscribe, share on social media, and let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And if you wanted to support Cosmic Road in a bigger way, please consider becoming a channel member. See the first link in the description below. Okay, let's just get right to it. If you guys remember, I shared a video, or part of a video, from Scientists Against Myths last week, talking about the alien bodies, and this was a video shared by Gary Nolan, and you know, among other things, it talked about how the alien heads precisely match a llama skull, and the conclusion from this was that indeed that's you know, the head was created from the head of a llama. Let's just watch a moment.
It's perfectly the cranial cavity of a llama. The location of the olfactory bulbs, the inner ear, the brain hemispheres, and the cerebellum precisely matches those in a llama skull.
Okay, I'm not going to play that much longer because it's got music showing. So let's go to what the doctor who actually examined these things had to say. And it's subtitled. I will read what he says, because I'm worried that my screen capture device, OBS, might cut off the bottom of that, so you won't be able to read it. And a lot of people don't want to just read, so I'll read for you, but I will minimize my head in case you do want to read the subtitles, if indeed OBS allows them to show up. It tends to cut off the edges of the screen. So let's listen to what the doctor has to say in my voice. We have just finished the radiographies of these two heads. On the picture here concerning the first head, we can notice that the borders are made of bone tissues. Can see two layers. A thin external layer which constitutes the cranium, and the other on below, which coincides with arcs of eyes and brows, which will coincide with this. So I repeat, the first picture coincides with the cranium transversal section. And the other one over the opaque part would coincide with the arch of eyebrows. We can also see the eye sockets here, and hear the face. Here we can see an orbital cavity, and here the second one. On this other picture, we can see an empty cavity which coincides with the oral cavity. On this other picture, we have a better projection. We can notice here the neurocranium, the bone tissues in lower, the eyebrows, and here another orbital cavity, and the other one here. And on this other picture, one darker zone which coincides with the oral cavity. We can see lower down what seems to coincide with the first vertebra articulations. Here, this is a vertebra. We can see here the first vertebra, no doubt. On this other picture, in this lateral projection, we can notice two important things. The first one is the cranium bone, and the second one would coincide with the nose bone. This bone here would coincide with the lower jaw. Jaw for evidence with the bone constituting the base of the skull. And here what would coincide with the great occipital foramen. We can also notice here a cavity who seems to be an occipital lobe. This area in paler. On this new picture, we can partially see the bone tissue. And this would coincide with the lower jaw. This would coincide with the arch of the orbital cavity, and here too. Eyes would come above here. We can also notice a suture on the skull here on this full length. We can see it clearly. There is at least a longitudinal one. We do not see other sutures. Why ocular cavities are so difficult to see? Yes, they are visible. Have a look. It's a bit difficult to see clearly because of the powder, but they are visible. Here we can see what coincides with the mouth, and here oculars cavities. We do not see it clearly on this picture. This is a better one. Dr. Salazar, what's your opinion concerning these artifacts? Is it a fraud? Are they fakes or real or inauthentic? It will be necessary, firstly, to determine the biological origin with DNA analysis, which is the better way to determine biological origin. And also make radiocarbon dating. I don't know about you. For me, that didn't really clear anything up. I'm not convinced, based on that analysis, that these are indeed genuine alien bodies.
We see, same stuff, a hodgepodge of human and animal bones. Here's a mummy named Josephine. A real beauty. Instead of humeri, she sports femurs, or thigh bones. Her legs are even more baffling. One of the thigh bones is actually a femur, only facing the wrong way around, while the other one is a tibia. And they are completely mismatched. With the hip bone, there's no joint there at all.
To me, that is much more compelling. Meanwhile, Jaime Maussan might be in trouble based on all of this. Peruvian Culture Minister Leslie Ortega has questioned how the specimens, which she said were pre-Hispanic objects, left Peru, and says a criminal complaint has been filed. I'm not worried, says Jaime Maussan. I have done absolutely nothing illegal. How the bodies arrived in Mexico is a question he says he cannot answer. Borrowed by Maussan for the hearing, they are in the possession of a Mexican man who was in Maussan's office on Friday and who declined to be identified. When asked how the bodies, whom he called Clara and Marcio, came to be in his possession, the man replied only that he would reveal all at the appropriate time. Now, I really don't mean to rag on Jaime. I think he's probably done a lot for ufology in Mexico, but at the same time, it's not a good look. But I'm not going to condemn him until I have more information. He may have a completely reasonable explanation. Now, if you go watch the full video on Scientists Against Myths, they take you all the way through it, the various pieces of evidence that these bodies are not real alien bodies, that they are cobbled together from pieces of other bodies. And it's, to me, it seems like, the Peruvian minister has a point that these are relics of their culture and that, they were probably made for some ritualistic purpose 1,000 years ago. And they are not alien bodies, I don't think, but again, I'm not a scientist or a doctor. I have not studied these bodies. However, any scientist or doctor that does address the public on this topic, I feel needs to answer the excellent debunking by scientists against myths, the video shared by Gary Nolan. So yeah, I think the debunking is very strong on this one. I would love for these to be genuine alien bodies, but I just don't think they are. Now, I do think there were aliens in South America and Mexico. There's aliens or non-humans all over the world, and some of them have a high interaction with humanity. Some of them have created hybrids that seem to have lived amongst us. And some of those hybrids, their bodies are probably still around. There are the elongated skull people. Now, many of the elongated skull people are human, are entirely human. They just bound their skulls. But why do they bind their skulls? They may have done it to emulate actual beings or hybrid beings that did have elongated skulls, because some of these elongated skull people, they have strange features like missing sagittal bones, sagittal sutures like this fella right here. And they also, some of them have a larger cranial capacity than a human cranial capacity, which could not be accomplished by binding your skull. You can't make your brain bigger by binding your skull. So I think that is a very high candidate, these elongated skull people, like this fella right here who has a missing sagittal suture, and who was found in the Americas, but half of its DNA is actually European, from Scotland. From the Scotland area. That is where its DNA, that's where the maternal DNA comes from on this being right here, whatever it is. We don't know the other half of its DNA, but we know it's maternal DNA, and it was found in the Americas 1,500 years ago, or at least that's how old it is. Indicating, again, the existence of Atlantis or some sort of high civilization that used to exist. A civilization that was global and that connected cultures across the world, and that was kind of a binding element, or at least that spread its influence around the world, and that did have some cross-cultural elements to it. And it may have brought people from across the sea to the Americas many, many years ago. Likewise, I wouldn't be surprised at all if we found people from the Americas, if we found their remains in Europe or Asia or Africa at some point in the future. We know that the mummies of Egypt, for example, some of them had cocaine and tobacco in their systems that were only grown in South America. Yeah, so while I may poo-poo the mummies of the Mexico hearing, or at least I don't think the evidence for that is very strong to be of non-human origin, let's say, I think it's a really interesting cultural relic, I do believe there are hybrids and non-humans that are walking the earth today, and that are, probably have walked the earth for a long time, interacting with humanity in various ways. I don't know what those ways were, except for what we know from mythology, and we do know some things from mythology. Like, ayahuasca was a tool given to the natives of that region by the gods to, I suppose, connect them to the greater phenomenon, to spirit, to source. And so I do think that the beings have been interacting with people for a long time, and that there are probably hybrids walking among the earth today, and they have for a long time. And some of those remains are probably still around, like this fella.
Again, among the original elongated skulls, which we believe were born with elongated skulls, they have eye sockets which are probably 50% larger than normal and are more vertically elongated. Also, the jaw, the lower jaw, the mandible, is much larger than normal. And
so yeah, I think that the hybrids have been here, and that they're still here, and that you can find their remains. And I wish that Jaime had shown the elongated skull people to the Mexican UFO hearing, not the ancient relics that Peru is trying to get back. But that's just my take, guys. If you think those are genuine alien bodies, I respect your opinion, and I would love to know your thoughts in the comments below. But yeah, let me know what you think about it all. And if you've enjoyed this video, please give me a big thumbs up. I sure appreciate it. I would love to see you guys on social media. There's Facebook and Twitter links below. If you wanted to share this video on social media, that would be super groovy. If you wanted to support Cosmic Road in a bigger way, please consider becoming a channel member. Channel members are rock stars, and I really appreciate you guys' support. Thank you. Meanwhile, there's plenty of other videos to check out on the channel, and I'll see you next time. This is Jack with Cosmic Road, signing out.